Morning, my lovies. Today I just want to read you a nice story. It's a fun story with lots of words in it. And it's called Hopping Mad. The title of the book is called Hopping Mad, and the writer or the author is Michael Catchpool. Fred lived next door to Finn. Fred had 5 frogs, and so did Finn. One night when the moon was up and the grass was damp, Finn's 5 frogs called to Fred's frogs, "Come on over, we're having a party." "What an excellent idea," Fred's frogs croaked back. "We'll be right over," and they hopped over the fence. The frogs dived and splashed and flipped and flopped and had a fantastic time. By the time the sun was coming up, they could hardly manage a hop. "Phew," croaked Fred's frogs. "We really must be getting home," and they dragged themselves back over the fence. The next morning, as the sun sparkled on the water, Fred stood idly counting his frogs. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then he looked over the fence and counted the frogs in Finn's pond. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Fred was furious. "Frog thief," he shouted at Finn. "You should have 5 frogs and you've got 6. You've stolen one of mine." And Fred marched into Finn's garden and snatched the frog before Finn could even say a word. "I'll soon put an end to your stealing," shouted Fred. And with some wood and some nails, he built his fence higher and higher. That evening, as an owl swooped across the sky, Fred's 5 frogs called to Finn's 5 frogs. "Come over to our pond tonight for some fun." "What an excellent idea," croaked Finn's frogs. The frogs frolicked and they feasted on flies until they were completely exhausted. "Time to be getting home," they croaked. Then Finn's frogs squeezed back under the fence. The next day, as the birds were singing in the trees, Finn slowly counted his frogs. 1, 2, 3. He glared over the fence into Fred's pond. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Finn was fuming. "Frog thief," he shouted at Fred. "You have 7 frogs and I've only got 3. He marched right around to Fred's garden and snatched back his 2 frogs. "I'll stop you pinching my frogs," said Finn, and he dug a big, wide ditch by the fence. That evening, Finn's 5 frogs called to Fred's, "Why not party in our pond tonight?" So Fred's frogs scrambled over the huge fence and leaped over the enormous ditch. The frogs had a splendid time, diving and swimming and dancing and singing until they could hardly croak. Just before dawn, Fred's frogs returned home. They leaped back over the enormous ditch and scrambled back over the huge fence. The following morning, while the dew glistened on the grass, Fred carefully counted his frogs. 1, 2. Then he counted the frogs in Finn's pond. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Fred was frantic. thief, he shouted at Finn. You've stolen 3 of my frogs. And he marched through the gate and he snatched back his frogs. I'll put a stop to this, Fred said. And he put a great big cage over his frogs and over his pond. That evening, Fred's 5 frogs called to Finn's frogs. We can't play tonight. We've been locked up. Then we'll come over to you, croaked Finn's frogs, and they leaped across the great big ditch and over the high fence and opened the door of the cage. Phew, said Fred's frogs. You know, us frogs need our freedom. And off they hopped, with Finn's frogs close behind. Now, Fred has no frogs, and neither does Finn. But Fiona, who lives 4 doors down the road, she has 10. Croak, croak, croak. Wasn't that such a fun story, my lovies? Now I want you to go listen to the story again. And every time you hear a word that starts with a f, press pause and ask mommy to write it down for you. If you hear f, Fred, f, Finn, f, fence, f, fuming, f, furious, f, 5, f, 4, any word that starts with a f, you tell mommy pause and she writes it down for you. And maybe you can even learn to spell some of those words. Have a lovely day, my lovies. Bye-bye.